and welcome to Front Row Racing's track guide for no other circuit than Monza. I'm Front Row Racing DP. I've got my trusty friend with us again, Ted Craftsticks, to point out the obvious and perhaps the not so obvious. The track guides are going to go as they usually do a warm-up lap, guide lap, late braking, off the racing line, on the racing line, and so on. Now, as we're doing this warm-up lap around Monza, I will admit Monza seems very different in these cars compared to the old ones. This has now become a very, very tricky circuit, whereas on the F1 2013 it was a doddle, it was very, very easy. On this game, much more difficult. The braking zones are a lot harder, the traction zones are a lot harder. I've also had the disadvantage of, I've upgraded from a DFGT wheel to a T300 wheel in the last couple of weeks, and it's taken me a while to get used to the brake and throttle pedal on that steering wheel. And for any of you that have got a T300 and are struggling with a dead zone on the brake, here's a simple tip for you. Use the brake as a footrest, that way when you brake there's no gap, there's no dead zone because your foot's already there. Obviously what you've got to be careful of is pressing the brake when you're resting your foot, but trust me, get used to doing that, you won't have a problem anymore. Now, like I say, this circuit does seem much more difficult now on this version of the game. I'm just going to quickly pause it at the start finish line, and obviously on this first guide lap I am going to pause it quite a lot at every single corner, because these guides are for those people who are struggling really. So if you're struggling for a corner on a track, check out my track guides, because you'll be able to find out what you need to know and then work on it yourself. For those of you that are already really fast, are you really fast because you're cutting corners everywhere, or are you really fast because you're just genuinely quick? If that's the case, then these guides probably aren't going to help you. For those of you that are cutting corners everywhere, and I've seen a lot of, for example, Monza videos on YouTube, people like so happy that they've got a 123.1 or a 123.2 lap time and giving out their setup and thinking it's an amazing lap, and then when you watch it, the car's all over the place. They're sliding it through all of the corners thinking they're playing Mario Kart, or they need a few missiles going pssh, and they're cutting corners all over the place. Well, you won't see me doing that. I mean, I've done a 123.5 with a setup that's not actually very good at the moment, and I've done it without cutting corners. So if I started cutting corners, I'd probably knock a second off my lap time. So for those of you that are cutting corners, stop cheating, watch my my track guides, and maybe you'll learn how to play the game properly. Okay, rant over until the ETL lap anyway. I would just say the Ferrari has got a fantastic noise when you're on board with it. When you follow its spectator view, it sounds a bit raspy and horrible, but when you're on board it does sound very nice. One of the best turbo whistles on the game. Okay, so Monza, like I said, very different track now, so there are going to be things that are going to be different from my F1 2013 track guide. No point waffling on about it, let's go. We'll head off up to turn 1. I'm going to let it play through turn 1 and 2, and then I'm going to pull it back, but I will admit to you, I didn't quite get turn 1 spot on. It's a very tricky braking zone this, but you want to be hard on the brakes, as hard as you can, and do a late downshift into second. Ideally clip turn 1's apex and then exit turn 2, and at this point be as aggressive as your car will allow you to be. Now, like I said, I didn't get it absolutely spot on, because at this point I would like to be just touching this curb here. I have missed it slightly, but like I say, with my new pedals and the way the cars are handling on this game, it's a very different kettle of fish to what we were previously used to. Okay, as we approach turn 1, on the previous track guide I used to say there was a white line going across the track, brake at that point. Personally, if I wait for the white line that's coming up, that one just there next to the 100-metre marker board, it's too late and someone's phoning me, so I'll have to press pause and then carry on in a moment. Right, and we're back, and thank you very much to Kudos R for interrupting the track guide there. And yes, I know folks, I need to get a new ringtone. To be fair, it's a newish phone and I don't really use it much anyway, so it's not that often I get a phone call, so it's not that often I hear the ringtone and realise, okay, I'm the person sat on the bus with a really crap ringtone. Now, seeing as he phoned me and he interrupted me, I have no idea what point I was up to, but obviously to you guys it's only been about 10 seconds. Yeah, I was mentioning about the white line, if I remember rightly, up here. I don't know if they've moved it, because I'm fairly sure it used to be a little bit before the 100-metre marker board, so I would guess they have moved it. So if you break at the white line for turn 1, there's a fairly good chance you're going to struggle around turn 1. You're not going to make it. So what I do, or what I've started doing is, obviously approaching here, 8th gear, doing about 226, 227 mile an hour at this point. And before we get to this the new tarmac patch, I've actually done a downshift. As you can see, I'm now in 7th gear. It's just going to slow the car down a tiny little bit. Then when I get to the actual patch just here, the new tarmac, I'm on the brakes, and I'm on the brakes hard. So about 110 meters we're on the brakes hard. Get your downshifts done, although when you get to 3rd gear, do not be too eager to throw it into 2nd. If you do it too soon, you're going to just spin the rear end out. So you'll see we're now in 3rd gear, and we're not going to change into 2nd until we're a bit further up the road. Now it's all about turn-in point. Where do you turn in? Well, you could if you want to, use the end of the new tarmac, but it's going to be a bit too soon for you. So you need to go beyond it a little bit. And then there isn't really a lot else here to give you a pointer other than the Allianz sign here. Just before that goes out of the screen, I mean, I have let it go out of the screen and then I'm turning in, which is why I've missed the apex. But just before it's out of your screen on the left hand side over here, start to turn in. Now the aim is to clip the apex here, not cut the corner, not get all over the sausage curb, just get 2 wheels on this first part of the curb. If you get 2 wheels on here nicely, excuse me, it sets you up perfectly for the next corner. Now you can see that I'm obviously a few tyre widths away from being on this curb, which if you're smart you'll know means it's going to compromise the next corner. Now the ideal way to take these 2 corners is clipping this curb, holding the throttle on all the way between these 2 corners and then driving away without taking your foot off the throttle. That's the perfect way of doing it. If you find you're in a situation like I am now, where you've missed the apex, you're going to run a little wide, you have no choice but to lift off a little. If you don't, you're going to end up in the gravel just in front of the big TV screen, and you really don't want to do that. So now we're in the situation of, okay, we're going to run a little bit wide, we're going to keep turning it to try and give ourselves as much of a turning circle around this corner. And then around about this point, just as we get it straightened up, we give it a little ease off, turning straight away, and this curb here. This is a curb that, again, you don't want to take too much of it. It will unbalance the car, especially if you're using a wheel. Yeah, get too much on this curb and it just bounces the car. You're going to struggle for traction and possibly even spin. So clipping the curb like this isn't too much of a problem, but like I've already mentioned, we're offline at this point. So keep an eye out for the on the racing line lap later on for a good line through here. So anyway, once you're through the apex of this corner, get your steering off, start applying the throttle a little more, and then as your wheels straighten up, you have to be aggressive. Get that power down. The problem is if you do it too soon or too hard, you're going to spin the wheels up, and if you do that, you're just going to lose time. But if you're practicing, go for it. Get around turn 2 and just floor it. If you get loads of wheel spin, you know you need to be a little bit more careful until a little further down the road, and then you can floor it. But you do have to be aggressive. Okay, so that's turn 1 and 2. So we'll just go through at full speed again and just have a listen for the ease off I have to do between the 2 corners, and then how aggressive I am on the exit. There's the lift off, and now we're aggressive. And you may hear it sounds like I'm bouncing off the limiter in 3rd gear. Now the revs are showing that I should change gear, but I'm working on a rule of thumb for F1 2014. Stay in third gear until you get to at least 118 mile an hour. Reason being, your light shifter will tell you to shift up anywhere from about 96 mile an hour onwards. But if you're capable of doing another 22 mile an hour in that gear, it's worth going for it, especially in third, because otherwise when you go to fourth you'll bog it down. So don't be afraid of extending third gear to 118 mile an hour. Okay, now we'll carry on towards Curva Grande. Easy corner, flat out, but try not to turn too much. Carry the speed. I've clipped the curb a bit, and once you're in this point you've got two options: allow the car to run out wide or keep a tight line. Either one is pretty good. But what I will say is, if you're playing the game offline against the computers and you find yourself in this situation with computer cars here, do not go up the right hand side of them. They will come across the track, knock you off. You're going to whinge and moan about them crashing you off, but at the end of the day they've just stuck to the racing line. So don't go around the outside up here of computer cars. Against humans, slightly different matter. Okay, we're going to play through the next chicane at full speed and then we'll pull it back. Hard on the brakes again. Now it looks like we've taken a decent line through the first part and a good line through the second part. However, everything is not exactly as it appears. And this is one of the corners where I know a lot of people just cut the corners, and I don't like that myself. Now, the first part of the corner, it looked like we had a good line through it. However, as we back it up, you'll soon see that actually we've taken too much of the curb. Proven by, at this point, I mean, this is proper borderline. We've got tyre on white line. This is maximum limit. You're borderline taking the mickey here. Excuse me. So you do have to be careful of taking way too much curb at this corner and getting into trouble for corner cutting it. Even though if on your screen it looks alright, for someone that's spectating it could look like a clear corner cut. So anyway, what do we do for these corners? Well, on the old game it was a very simple process here. You brake around about the bridge and you can make the corner quite easily. Slow it down, turn in and boot it through the second part. Not quite the same in these new cars. They just don't have the grip to be able to do it that way. Now what I've been doing is you have the option of going up to 8th gear before you get to this Rolex sign or not. Personally, I'm finding it easier to stay in 7th, and it's not a speed thing, it's a gear changing thing. So if I stay in 7th gear and go just beyond the bridge, I find it easier to go down 4 gears from this point than to go down 5 gears from this point. The speed I'm doing is pretty much exactly the same anyway. It's just for ease of comfort of getting the maximum out of the corner. Okay, so where do we brake? Well, we need to do it at about 125 metres. So you can go a little bit beyond the bridge. But then we have the big shadow with the tree here. You may notice I've now knocked it down to 6th gear, and I'll do that before I brake, but then when I get on this tree I'm on the brakes. Now this is a corner where initially when you're at high speed you need to be hard on the brakes and aggressive on the brakes and get it down the gears into 3rd gear. This chicane is a 3rd gear chicane, especially in quali mode. And with a lot of fuel on you may have to take it in 2nd, but I'd still be trying it in 3rd myself. Now as we get closer to the corner, turn-in point becomes crucial. So I'll show you what I do here and then it'll explain why I've done what I've done. I used to say at the start of this curb, turn in, you can make the corner. It's not the same on this game. You kind of have to go a little bit further on. However, if you turn in too soon, you see I'm now starting to turn in. This turning point here for me is what has led me to take too much curb on this corner here. So personally I'm going to be trying to go a little bit further and turning in just at the start of this shadow and then trying to carry the speed. Okay, as we approach the left hand corner, off throttle at this point to make sure that we can get the car turned in and aiming in the direction we want to be. Obviously I've come off the steering a bit to try and not cut the corner, but we are maximum limit there. And the ideal situation to find yourself in is with your car in around about this position, nose of car aiming at apex curb, and you can still get your car in this position turning in slightly later. Once you're in this position, you want to be on throttle. On F1 2013 at this point I would have been absolutely flat out gung-ho, away we go. It's not the same on here. If I go flat out from this point, I'm just going to lose the rear end and lose time. So what I have to do is speed up, but with not too much throttle usage. So I am on the throttle, I am putting the power down, but I can't go maximum power until I'm at around about this point now. And you do want to end up with your car in this situation, left wheels on the curb, using all of it. Don't get in the gravel, but you do want to end up in your car with your car in this position, because that shows you're pushing it to the limit. Once you're here, you can go absolutely flat out. Okay, I'll quickly pull it back. We'll go through those two corners at full speed so that you can hear how I'm using the throttle on the right hand part of it. Then I'm flat out. Okay, the two Lesmos, going to play them both through at full speed. I love these corners. You can lose so much time here, very easy to get wrong, but you can also gain so much time here. Now before I did this track guide I must have done 50-60 laps, so I've tried taking these corners in a number of different ways. Tried driving up to them as fast as I can and braking late, doing stuff late, trying to carry as much speed as I can. It's just not working. With these two corners, the sooner you get your car prepared, the more chance of being on throttle through the corners instead of off throttle through the corners and then accelerating afterwards. And this is where a lot of time is gained by the good drivers. Instead of being off throttle around corners, they're powering through them. And it's all down to what they do in the braking zones, when they slow the car down, when they get it turned in. All of that allows them to take the speed through the corner. Okay, so Lesmo 1. Like I say, I like these corners, so I'm half tempted not to tell you what I do, but it would go against everything I do with these track guides, so I will tell you. Just ahead of us here we have the Santander sign. It's a new feature, I believe, on F1 2014, and I reckon they've put it in there as a marker to say this at this point, just here is where you need to do your stuff to make the corner. So as we approach it, you'll see I'm in 5th gear. I'm going to go just slightly past it onto this shadow. I'll mention this shadow in a moment. And now we're in 4th gear. So we have literally just gone past the Santander sign onto the shadow. Now the reason I've done it on the shadow is because from F1 2013 this shadow here is my corner preparation point. I use the shadow of the tree to tell me, right, okay, it's braking time now. Now if you do want to do it by the shadows, it could be a little bit tricky because obviously there is quite a few of them now. There's more up here than there used to be. Now, I wouldn't necessarily suggest counting them, but it is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 5th shadow, but it's also the biggest of the shadows. Now it could just be coincidence or it could be for a reason, but I would suggest do your downshift next to the Santander sign. Use the shadow if someone's written off that sign. Okay, so when we get to this point, we downshift to 4th. You don't really need to use any brakes here. Keep it nice and close to the edge of the circuit. You go past the next shadow, it's a smaller one, and then as you get into the bigger one, start to turn in. You can see now we are turning in for the corner. So by the time we get to this service road, we're actively aiming for the corner. As we approach the corner, you don't really want to be too much on throttle at this point because you need to make sure the car is going to clip the apex at the ideal point. The ideal point of the apex of the corner is just around here. We've gone around a lot of the corner already, but this orange fire marshal sign is where you really want to apex the corner. However, you'll notice that a little bit before that, I am able to get on the power. So as you first turn in, don't be on the throttle. As you're going around the corner, get back on that throttle. By the time you get to the apex point, you should be full throttle. So from here on now, we're just flat out. Use all of the road, let the car slide out wide, but don't get on the gravel, obviously. And be very, very careful of overreacting to a little kick of oversteer here. Very easy to end up in the wall over there. Now, the second Lesmo is pretty much exactly the same. As we approach it, we've got the 50-metre marker board just here, next to a big ass shadow. Use the big shadow as your corner activation zone, as I'm now going to call it. So when we get to that shadow, we're going to do exactly the same pretty much as what we've done at the previous corner. Downshift it into fourth. Don't really need to use any brakes, because the earlier you do this, the less brakes you need. So as we get close, fifth gear again on the shadow, down to fourth. Now it's all about turn-in point. Do not be afraid to turn in early here. This apex curb is an apex curb you want to use. So turn in before the difference of tarmac. If you wait for that point, personally, I think it's a little bit too late. By turning in a bit before it and being confident, can be slightly off the throttle, we'll just see the revs have dropped down, get it turned in, and then when we know we're going to make the apex at this point, back on the throttle. And I mean on it. Be aggressive, don't be afraid to floor it. And then once we're in this position, you can just drive away. So like I say, for those two corners, the sooner you do your corner preparation, the faster you can go through these two corners, and you can be on the power through them instead of slowing down around them. Okay, full speed, nicely on the power in the second one, back on the power. Okay, now we've got DRS activation, a little bit of a kink, then we're going to head under the old track. We're going to be reaching about 217 mile an hour up to Ascari. We're going to go full speed. This is now a much trickier set of corners than it used to be on the previous game. On the previous game, you could take these corners in fifth, flat out, absolute doddle, very simple in a way, fast corners. I'm finding it much more tricky. Especially with the brakes on these cars, because they are hybrid cars with much bigger brake recovery systems and turbo systems, the brakes work in a very, very different way. Now on F1 2013, I always used to say, use this sign over here as your braking point, because if you brake here and brake a little, you can carry much more speed through the corner. Excuse me. However, I've tried all of the different brake pressures, sizes, and nothing is allowing me to brake here consistently and carry a lot of speed. It's either slowing me down way too much or not slowing me down anywhere near enough, and I don't want to brake earlier. I've now got myself a nice balanced brake setup, but I can't brake at this point, it's too soon. So what we do is we approach the corner in 8th gear. I'm just going to check my notes, yep, and then at you'll just about see the 100-metre marker board is just approaching us here, but at about 110 metres, it's probably not even 110, but just before the 100-metre marker board, look at the ground, there's a change of tarmac. That there is my braking zone. However, while I've been pointing this out to you, you will not have noticed I'm now in 7th gear. So yes, this is my braking point, but I've done my downshift already, my first one. And that just helps you with slowing the car down. When you do that is up to you, but if you do that first one just before you hit the brakes, it works well. If you get to my braking point, do your downshift, then brake, it's too late. You're either going to have to brake so hard you're going to go slow through the corner, or you're not going to brake enough and you won't make the corner. So do your downshift before the braking point. So as we get to the change of tarmac, we're in 7th, now we're on the brakes, and this is a very tricky braking zone because the temptation is to brake hard, but you don't want to do that. By braking hard you reduce too much speed, and your mid corner speed here is crucial. It will dictate what speed you take through the next part of Ascari and all the way down the straight into the woods. So your mid corner speed is vital here. So don't brake too hard and aim for an apex speed of around about 125 to 130 mile an hour. Anything less than that and you're losing time. Okay, now as we approach the corner, obviously we need a turn-in point. So as we approach, we're on the brakes a little bit, down the gears into 4th. I'm going to take these in 4th gear. And now we've got the 50 metre marker board, and that is your turn-in point. We can turn in, and we want to clip this apex. We don't want to cut it, but we do want to use it. As you'll see, I stay on the road clearly, and we can carry the speed through the corner. Very, very easy. Now we're into the second part of Ascari and the horrible curb. You do not want to get on this curb. Now I'm going to initially, but you'll see what happens. As I'm on the curb, I'm realising I don't want to be on here, but I've kind of got to take a little bit of it. The perfect position to have your car in though is on the tarmac here. So although I've had a good apex speed, I've not quite got the turning right. I should have turned a little bit more, excuse me, but that's down to the new wheel, the car setup and things like that. But your aim is to not be on this curb. Now, up to the point I am at the moment, it's not too bad being on that curb. It gives you a false sense of security. The problem is where the curb changes shape here. We go from a nice flat curb into a V-shaped gully. And when you get on that, the car bounces, which is exactly what's happened there. I've had a little bounce, although you probably can't see it. The revs have gone up and down. It's unbalanced the car. It's sent me out wide, and now we're looking at having a bit of a wiggle. We're up to 5th. This kink is flat out. Again, use a bit of the curb, but do not cut it, which I haven't done here. Taking it like that is absolutely fine. Now from that point of the curb where I said you really don't want to be on it, let's go back a little bit more. If you're on tarmac all the way around the corner up to sort of this point, you can be absolutely flat out full throttle through this bit. It's easy. The more of this curb you take, the more chance of oversteer or crashing or having to not be full throttle. So the less curb you use here, the faster you go there. So just try and work on sticking on the road on the middle part of Ascari. Okay, we'll go and do that at full speed. A little bit of a wiggle there, but not too much of a problem. Avoid the gravel on the exit, and now we head up to the Parabolica. I used to really like this corner. I'm not such a big fan of it anymore. They've changed a couple of the things on approach, but at least we do still have the gravel on the exit, which they won't have in real life anymore. Okay, looks simple enough, but I can honestly tell you that how your brakes are set up and how your car's set up will dictate what speed you can take through this corner. Also, what gear you use will dictate what speed you can do. For some reason, I struggled like mad with this particular corner. Now, it could be that on F1 2013, I'd slow the car down using a very small amount of brakes. On my new pedals, it's not very easy to just do a very small amount of brakes. So that could be the issue. However, I've got around it. It isn't a problem on this lap or any of the following laps, and it shouldn't be a problem anymore. So it probably isn't down to the brakes, it's more down to the setup. Now this corner, you don't have to brake a lot for it. You do only need a tiny little bit of brakes, but it's a bit like the Lesmos. The sooner you prepare the car for the corner, the faster you can go round it. If you try slowing it down nice and late up near the entrance to the corner, it's too late. You're going to go too slow around the corner. And again, your apex speed you want to aim for around this corner is a minimum 125 mile an hour. Anything above that and you're laughing. Now that may not seem a lot, and to be honest it's not, because in the old cars your mid-corner apex speed was about 138 mile an hour. And that's not that these cars aren't very good, it's just they don't have as much downforce or as much grip as the previous car, so it's harder to take a higher apex speed. So like I said as we approached it a moment ago, they've changed a few of the things on approach, and one of them was there used to be AstroTurf down by the edge of the track, which I used to use as my braking points, and they've got rid of it. So to be honest, this zone is going to be much more about your own ability rather than having a specific braking point or a mark that you can go on. I have spotted a couple of new things which may still be able to help you, but there's no sort of initial here you go brake at this point. And the reason for that is, although yes there is a 100-metre marker board here and a 50-metre marker board just down the road, when you're doing 215 mile an hour you don't see them. And I know you don't, because I, like I said, did 50-60 laps and actually never saw those signs until I watched this replay to make my notes from. So giving you the 100-metre marker board as a braking zone, braking point even, probably isn't that practical for you. So the only thing that I can really say is, and I will just check my notes for it, yeah, it's all on judgment. The 100-metre marker board is there, but you're not going to see it. So for me, what I found I was doing was, you got the Rolex sign, it's the last one over the track. You go beyond it a tiny little bit and downshift. This is what I was doing. So we've gone past it. We are going to downshift now. And we have just gone past the 100-metre marker board. So we're at about 80 metres. So the 100-metre marker board's not really going to help you anyway. So it's kind of like you've got to go past the Rolex sign a little bit, then do your downshift, do your braking. You'll soon know if you've got it wrong or not when it comes to turning in for the corner. Because if you've done it too late, you're going to go wide, or you're going to slow down less than 125 mile an hour. And obviously that's your aim. Everything you do here will dictate that apex speed. Okay, so as we get closer to the corner, the turn-in point now becomes crucial. And I did spot a couple of things that may help with this point. You see, we've gone way past the 50-metre marker board. We're now down into 4th gear. And the game says use 5th gear for this corner. However, every time I tried this corner in 5th gear, I either braked too much or just couldn't get the car turned in. My average apex speed was about 118 mile an hour. Taking it in 4th, with much more throttle, I was able to take it at 125 minimum, so it's much easier. So your turn-in point, well, there's two little things that may be able to help you. Just here on the road is a mark that goes all the way across the road. You can use that as your turn-in point, or if you struggle to see that, you'll notice just here there's a nice light patch of grass, and it is the only one there. So could just be sheer coincidence, or as I like to think, it's there for a reason. It's your marker for turning in. So as you approach the light patch, the line going across the road, begin your turning in. At this point you do want to still be on the throttle a little bit, but not too much, because now we need to focus on the apex point of the corner. And considering that this is a very long corner, your apex point is important. Now we've got an F1 sign just above the road here, where the road sticks out a little bit. That's not your apex point. You need to go beyond that a little bit. Yes, get up close and personal to the curb. However, your apex point is this bit. This is the more prominent point of the corner. Now I'm going to take a little bit too much curb, but if you are wanting to know exactly what point this part of the curb is, you go past the F1 sign, which is just above us now, just up there, past the F1 sign, and then there's a lamp post, a tannoy lamp post. This here is your apex point. It's also just before the wall gets closest to the track. Once you've got beyond the apex point, you want to be full throttle. This is where being in fourth is advantageous. Less chance of oversteer. Doing it in fifth, I was getting all types of oversteer around this corner at slower speeds. So in fourth gear, I can now floor it, let the car run out wide. If you need to know what point you let it run out wide to, there's a little bit of curb that is going to approach us when I am letting the car run really wide here to try and get it as straight as possible. I'm sure there was a piece of curb here. It's there eventually. Oh, it's all the way up here now. Okay. Well, obviously you don't want to go beyond the curb there, but that little bit of curb there is very, very surprising. Can come in very, very handy in a race. The more speed you try and take around the parabolica, quite often you'll find that piece of curb is in exactly the right place for you. Okay, so round the parabolica at full speed one more time, and that's the end of the initial guide lap, and then we're on to having a look at late braking. Now obviously I've gone a bit wide there, so I've had a little bit of a wiggle, but it's not too much of a problem. Okay, what happens if you late brake and ignore everything that I have told you? So we're going to downshift at the start of the patch instead of just before, and it's too late. We can't make the corner. Now I am going to try and slalom these, but you get to this point, can't make it, and end up going through the Emirates sign, which is great fun, but at the same time be careful, because I've now got a piece of the sign stuck just under here, and now it has disappeared out the back of the car. Okay, turns 4 and 5, I mentioned about braking at about 110, we're going to go deeper. We braked at about 95, 100, and we've not made the corner. The Lesmos will go beyond the Santander, and we're much, much wider. It is slower. Now we've done the corner a metre later in preparation, and we end up in the gravel. It makes a big difference. Okay, a scarring. We've gone past the mark in the road, we've not made the corner, we're all over the curb, and our apex speed is about 110 mile an hour instead of 125, 130. Now for the last corner, I'm not going to do anything until we get to the 50 metre marker board. So past the 100, at the 50 on the brakes, we've locked it up, and again our apex speed is now terrible, and we've had oversteer trying to recover the car. Okay, now we are on to being off the racing line. So what to do if you're going to go for an overtake, or if this is your racing line? Well, normally I would say brake at my usual point. However, at Monza they've done something a little bit sneaky. If you happen to be throwing it up the inside, ignore the first new piece of tarmac, but look, there's the new piece of tarmac for the normal braking point, and here's a new piece of tarmac in the pit lane. Use this as your potential braking point for turn 1. In a race, it's slippy down here, it's dirty, there's a good chance you're going to slide straight on. So try braking here. You'll realise you can make the corner easy. The car next to you can't turn in anyway, but you still need to give them a little bit of room. But yeah, if your car's there, they can't turn in. Okay, so heading up to turn 4 and 5, and there's the piece of the sign that was stuck under the car. You can overtake into this corner, but you do need to give room. Two cars can go side by side through here if you brake at the normal point and give room, but you are both going to go slow. It takes mutual respect, but it can be done. Lesmo, normal braking point, just go down the additional gear to get the initial turn in. Same for the second one. Go down to third, you stay on the road nice and comfortably. Now as we head up to Ascari, people try it, but it's never really one that's going to work amazingly well for everyone. Also be careful at the bridge. Brake it hard, get it down the extra gear, keep it away from the edge of the curb, because there's probably a car there, but it's slippy. Clipping that curb too much can give you a moment. Sometimes you're better off just waiting for this straight. The parabolica, you can go for it here, do what I would normally do from on the racing line, but just be a little more patient on turning, Be careful on the exit, don't run out wide if there is a car next to you. Okay, now we'll have a look at being back on the racing line, and we'll see if we can actually make the apex curb of turn 1 on this occasion. So this is doing everything properly, hopefully. Brake at the start of the patch, a late downshift for second, nice line, nice positive steering, and then aggressive on the exit. Holding third gear to 118, avoid the sign. Flat out round Curva Grande, easy corner. Just past the bridge and then hard on the brakes. Turn it in at the shadow, clip the curb, no cutting the corners, using all of the exit curb. Lesmos, do it early, get it turned in on the power all the way round the corner. Same for the second one, do it early and power through the corner. We did it slightly too late, which meant we're slightly wide on the exit, but we managed to keep it on the road. Ascari, let's carry the speed. Sounds slow, but it's actually quick. We've stayed on the tarmac and we're now quicker on the exit of it. The Parabolica, minimum speed we want to look at is 125. Now obviously you can't see what speeds I'm doing, so you will just have to trust me, but at least I am giving you a target speed. And then beyond the apex point, power away from it. And at this point I'm now going to pause it, which will hopefully be for one of the last times, just to point out that the pit lane at Monza is a very, very simple one, because this next lap we're going to look at ETLs, pit entry and pit exit. Don't go cutting across this bit of the pit entry. Once you're around the Parabolica, get it over to the right hand side and go flat out into the pit lane. Easy. You cut this bit and you're looking at getting a penalty. Okay, exceeding track limits, ETLs. We don't want to see people doing stuff like you're about to see here, cutting corners, thinking you're quick. I'm not accusing, I'm just saying I know there's a lot of people out there that do videos that do cut corners that are quick. That is an exceeding track limits, as is that. You're cutting the corners. So we don't want to be seeing that. If you do cut a corner by mistake, you can rectify it by lifting off enough for the stewards in front row racing to see it. But if you keep cutting a corner and keep lifting off, you're going to get penalised because you cut the corner. Okay, this corner, I know people take the mick here, but don't. That's cutting a corner, and so is that. It's not that difficult to actually keep it on the road. Good luck cutting this one, because the wall will hit you and put you in the gravel. Now this is another one people will cut, don't bother. We don't want to see none of that kind of stuff. Now obviously I'm not doing this at the maximum potential speed, because I'm not interested in putting in a phenomenal lap time by cheating. It's not of my nature. Okay, Ascari. I've seen worse. I watched a YouTube clip or video before I did my track guide here, and people were so far onto these curbs here, it was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, I mean, this here is only just all four wheels off the road, but it is cutting the corner. For those of you that aren't in our league and want to know why I have a problem with this, it's simple. There's white lines that go around the edge of the track. They dictate the edge of the track, not the point in which the game says you're cutting a corner. Just because the game doesn't warn you doesn't mean it's absolutely fine to cut corners like this. It's not on. You're just cheating. You're just trying to gain an advantage. And trust me, there will come a point where either Codemasters penalise it properly, or you'll realise that if you're doing it in a league and people are recording it and people see you doing it, they're not going to be, well, they're not going to go, oh well, I'll do it as well. You're going to have top drivers that say, no, you know what, I want to race properly, I want to race fairly, I want to race against people who aren't going to cut corners to try and beat me. So don't cut corners. If you're slow, you're slow. Practice, that's where it comes from. So don't cut corners like this. It's not worth the hassle. Now, one thing I didn't do at the start of this lap, I was meant to look at the pit exit, but it's not exactly a difficult one. Just go in a straight line all the way up to the 100 metre marker board of turn 1. It's as simple as that. Okay, that there is the end of the guide. We are now onto a warm down lap, and this is one hell of a long video for a track that's only got 10 corners, but it is a bit of a pain in the backside track now anyway. And one thing I would say, don't be afraid of doing what I'm doing here when you practice. push your car beyond the limit to see what it's capable of. It might surprise you in some places. Now, regarding the track guides, as I mentioned earlier on, they are aimed at people who are struggling rather than those that are already quick. There is track guides, all of them on the calendar up to Monza. I will get the following ones done as well, so if you can't find what you're looking for, be patient, I will get them done. If you're watching this one and you want to know about any of the tracks from Australia up to Monza, they're all on our YouTube channel. When it comes to league races, majority of our leagues are pretty much full at the moment, although if you are interested in joining a league, feel free to find us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want, plenty of videos on there. But yeah, find our Facebook, Front Row Racing, and feel free to send us a message or just keep an eye on things to see how we run our league. Anyway, as the Ferrari heads down to the Parabolica, he's been Ted Kravsticks, him in there has been Front Row Racing DP, and obviously we took a Ferrari around Monza. Apparently it's faster. Oh no, there's a YouTube rumour that's going to go round, the Ferrari's faster at Monza. It's not, all the cars do the same speed online, trust me, they do. I did a massive test on it. Anyway, it's goodbye from him, it's goodbye from him, it's goodbye from me. Thanks for watching, and I hope this has been of some help.